Tears blurred the smudges she couldn't quite remove from the hallway floor. Minseo Park moved her mop in practice circles, the rhythm as familiar as her own heartbeat after 7 years at Westfield Academy. Morning sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting golden rectangles across freshly polished tiles. She preferred these quiet moments before the chaos of teenage life invaded the corridors, before the whispers and sideways glances that made her hands tremble slightly as she worked. The bell would ring in 12 minutes. She quickened her pace. At 53, Minseo's body protested the constant bending and lifting her job required. Her back ached more these days, and the joints in her fingers occasionally locked while gripping the mop handle. Yet her movements remained precise, methodical, a curious grace in such mundane tasks that few noticed. Her light blue uniform hung loose on her small frame, the name badge slightly askew as always. She'd stopped adjusting it years ago, a small leather-bound notebook pressed against her side from the deep pocket of her uniform, her single indulgence, never seen by others. "Good morning, Miss Park," came a warm voice from behind her. Minseo straightened quickly, dipping her head in a slight bow. "Dr. Bennett, good morning." Principal Thomas Bennett smiled kindly at the janitor. At 47, his salt-and-pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses lent him an air of distinguished authority that served him well as head of one of the city's most prestigious private schools. Unlike many of his predecessors, he made a point of knowing every staff member's name. "The East Wing looks wonderful." "Thank you," he said, genuine appreciation in his voice. Minseo nodded again, unused to direct praise. "Just doing my job, sir." Dr. Bennett's eyes lingered on her a moment longer than usual. "You know, Ms. Park, I've been meaning to ask—" The first bell cut him off, signaling students had 7 minutes to reach their classrooms. "Another time," he said with a smile. "Have a good day." She watched him disappear around the corner, then quickly gathered her cleaning supplies. The hallways would flood with students momentarily, and Minseo preferred to be invisible during these transitions, a skill she had mastered almost perfectly over the years. Almost. Someone left garbage in the hallway," came a theatrical voice as students rounded the corner. Naomi Winters, a junior whose designer backpack probably cost more than Minseo's monthly salary, nudged her friend and nodded toward the cleaning cart. Minseo kept her eyes down, wheeling her cart toward the janitorial closet with practiced efficiency. "It smells like bleach and sadness," another girl added, triggering a ripple of laughter. Minseo had developed a mental fortress against such comments. They bounced off her like rain against glass. At least, that's what she told herself as she closed the supply closet door behind her and leaned against it, taking 3 deep breaths before continuing with her day. By lunchtime, the fortress walls had begun to crack. The cafeteria buzzed with teenage energy, hundreds of conversations merging into white noise as Minseo methodically wiped down empty tables. Most students barely registered her presence, too absorbed in their social hierarchies and digital worlds. She moved toward a recently vacated table where milk had spilled across the surface and was dripping onto the floor. As she approached with her cleaning cloth, a foot appeared in her path, seemingly by accident. Minseo stumbled, catching herself against the table, but not before her elbow knocked over a half-empty soda can that spilled its contents across her uniform. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," said Tyler Matthews, with exaggerated concern that didn't reach his eyes. Star basketball player and son of the school board president, Tyler enjoyed an untouchable status at Westfield. "I didn't see you there." His friends barely contained their snickering as brown liquid seeped through Minseo's light blue uniform. "It's fine," Minseo murmured, already reaching for her cloth to clean herself. "Let me help," Tyler said, grabbing napkins from the dispenser. Instead of handing them to her, he made a show of dabbing at her uniform while his friends recorded the interaction on their phones. "It's just, you're so quiet. It's like you're invisible sometimes." Minseo stepped back, discomfort radiating through her. "Please, I can manage." "Come on, I'm just trying to help the help," Tyler insisted, the double meaning drawing more laughter. From across the cafeteria, Sophie Chen watched the scene unfold, her stomach knotting with shame and indecision. Unlike most of Tyler's audience, she recognized the cruelty for what it was. As a scholarship student whose mother worked 2 jobs to supplement what her academic achievement had earned her, Sophie understood invisibility. She had perfected it herself during her first year at Westfield. Now a senior with early acceptance to Princeton, Sophie had found her place among the high achievers, neither popular nor unpopular, safely in the middle. Intervening would risk the delicate social balance she'd worked 3 years to achieve. Still, she couldn't tear her eyes away from the janitor's face. The woman's dignity in the face of humiliation struck something deep within Sophie. "Dude, that's enough," came an unexpected voice. Marcus Washington, another basketball player but from a considerably less affluent background than Tyler, stood up from the table. "You made your point." Tyler's smile faltered for a moment before returning. "Just having some fun, man. Lighten up." "Yeah, well, it's not funny." Marcus turned to Minseo. "I'm sorry about him." Minseo nodded once, her expression revealing nothing as she quickly retreated to the nearest restroom. Inside, she locked herself in a stall, pulling paper towels from her pocket to dab at her uniform. The soda had already begun to stick, the sugar making the fabric tacky against her skin. She would need to change, but her spare uniform was in the main custodial office across campus. The leather notebook had thankfully been spared, tucked safely in her pocket away from the spill. She pulled it out, running her fingers over the worn cover before opening it to a blank page. With a pencil stub, she wrote a single line. Incident 347. They do not see, but that is not their fault. Remember lesson 7. The bathroom door swung open. Minseo froze, holding her breath. "Ms. Park, are you in here?" It was Dr. Bennett's voice. "One of the lunch monitors reported what happened." Minseo closed the notebook and tucked it away before unlocking the stall door. "I'm fine, Dr. Bennett. Just a small accident." The principal's kind face hardened as he took in her stained uniform. "That was no accident, Ms. Park. I saw the video." Minseo's eyes widened. "Video? These things spread quickly among students. I've already confiscated several phones and deleted the recordings." He sighed deeply. "Tyler Matthews will be suspended and his parents notified." "Please," Minseo said quickly, "it's unnecessary. I don't want to cause trouble." Dr. Bennett studied her with a puzzled expression. "You're not causing trouble, Ms. Park. You're the victim here." Minseo looked away. "It was just soda. I have another uniform." "This isn't about the uniform," Dr. Bennett said gently. "It's about basic human dignity and respect, which every person in this school deserves, especially those who work tirelessly to keep it running." Something in his tone made Minseo look up. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and she felt strangely seen. Not as the invisible janitor, but as a person with depth and worth. "Take the rest of the day off, Ms. Park. With pay, of course." "That's not necessary." "I insist," he said firmly. "And please, come see me in my office tomorrow morning. There's something I'd like to discuss with you." After Dr. Bennett left, Minseo changed into her spare uniform and gathered her few belongings. As she walked toward the staff exit, she passed the main office where Tyler Matthews sat outside the vice principal's office, his usual confidence notably diminished. Their eyes met briefly. Minseo offered a small nod before continuing on her way. Her small apartment welcomed her with familiar silence. The space was modest but meticulously organized, a place for everything and everything in its place. The walls were sparsely decorated, save for a few framed photographs and a simple wooden cross above her bed. Minseo placed her stained uniform in the sink to soak and made herself a cup of tea. As the water boiled, she pulled out her leather notebook again and leafed through pages filled with her neat handwriting. Observations, reflections, and occasional sketches accumulated over years. She turned to a page marked with a small red ribbon. Lesson 7. The wounds we cannot see are often the deepest. Clean gently, with patience and without judgment. Healing begins with acknowledgement. Next to this entry was a small, detailed sketch of hands, surgeon's hands, holding something precious and broken. Minseo closed her eyes, and for a moment she was elsewhere. The scent of antiseptic filled her nostrils. The weight of responsibility pressed on her shoulders. The sound of monitors beeped in rhythmic reassurance. In her mind's eye, she saw herself in a different uniform. Crisp white coat, surgical mask, hands moving with confident precision as she directed a team in perfect harmony. "Dr. Park, we're losing her," a voice called urgently. Minseo's eyes snapped open, the vision dissolving like morning mist. Her hands trembled slightly as she raised the teacup to her lips. Tomorrow she would face Dr. Bennett, and she suspected her carefully constructed life was about to change. She was right, but not in the way she expected. The next morning, Minseo arrived at school earlier than usual, the halls still and silent in the pre-dawn light. She moved through her morning routine mechanically, mind preoccupied with her upcoming meeting. At precisely 7:30, she knocked softly on the principal's door. "Come in," Dr. Bennett called. Minseo entered, standing just inside the doorway with hands clasped before her, a posture of deference developed over years of making herself small. "Please, sit down." Dr. Bennett gestured to the chair across from his desk. She perched on the edge of the seat, spine straight, eyes lowered. "Ms. Park, how long have you been at Westfield?" 7 years, 2 months and 14 days, she answered without hesitation. Dr. Bennett's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's precise." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "I notice details." "Yes, I believe you do." He leaned forward, placing his elbows on his desk. "Which is why I find it curious that someone with your background would choose this particular profession." Minseo's head snapped up, eyes meeting his with sudden intensity. "My background?" "Dr. Minseo Park," he said quietly. "Former chief of cardiothoracic surgery at Seoul National University Hospital. A pioneering researcher in pediatric heart transplantation, recipient of the Global Medical Innovation Award 12 years ago." The color drained from Minseo's face. "How did you—" "I recognized you yesterday," Dr. Bennett explained, "when I saw your hands as you were cleaning. Surgeons' hands are distinctive, precise, methodical. It made me curious, so I did some research last night." He turned his computer monitor toward her. On the screen was a professional photograph of a younger Minseo in surgical scrubs, accepting an award on a brightly lit stage. "What I couldn't figure out," he continued gently, "is why one of the most brilliant surgical minds of her generation is mopping floors at a high school." Minseo's eyes fell to her hands, resting in her lap, hands that had once held beating hearts, now calloused from years of harsh cleaning chemicals. "That person died a long time ago," she said softly. "Records suggest otherwise," Dr. Bennett replied. "There was no scandal, no malpractice suit. You simply disappeared from the medical community 7 years ago." Minseo remained silent, her breathing shallow. "Ms. Park, Dr. Park, I'm not trying to expose you or force you to relive painful memories, but I believe your experience and knowledge could be invaluable to our students, especially those interested in medicine." She shook her head firmly. "I'm just a janitor now, and I respect that choice, though I don't understand it." He paused. "Would you at least consider speaking to our pre-med club? Many of them are struggling with the pressure of expectations." "No," Minseo said more forcefully than she intended. "I'm sorry, but no." Dr. Bennett nodded slowly. "I understand. Your privacy will be respected." "Is that all?" Minseo asked, already half rising from her chair. "Actually, no." Dr. Bennett shuffled some papers on his desk. "I was planning to speak with you anyway before yesterday's incident. Our school nurse is taking maternity leave starting next month. We need someone to fill in temporarily." Minseo froze. "I haven't practiced medicine in 7 years. The position mainly involves dispensing approved medications, applying bandages, and calling parents when necessary. Basic first aid, essentially." He smiled. "Given your background, I'd say you're overqualified. I don't think it comes with a significant pay increase, he added, and you wouldn't have to give up your current position if you don't want to. We could arrange a split schedule. Minseo's mind raced. The additional income would help her send more money to her sister's family back in Korea. Her niece was starting university next year. May I think about it? She asked quietly. Of course. Let me know by the end of the week. As Minseo left the office, her hand instinctively sought the notebook in her pocket, thumb running over the worn leather cover. 7 years of careful anonymity, threatened by a moment of recognition. The day passed in a fog as Minseo went through her cleaning routine, mind elsewhere. During lunch period, she noticed students watching her with unusual interest, some whispering, others quickly looking away when she glanced in their direction. By afternoon, rumors had apparently spread. Minseo overheard fragments as she emptied trash bins in the science wing. Was some kind of doctor in Korea or China or something. Tyler's dad is furious about the suspension. She kept her head down, moving efficiently from room to room. As she approached the chemistry lab, she heard a crash, followed by a cry of pain. Minseo rushed inside to find Sophie Chen clutching her hand, blood seeping between her fingers. Broken glass lay scattered across the lab table. I was putting away equipment, Sophie explained through gritted teeth. The beaker just shattered. Without thinking, Minseo took control of the situation. Sit down, she instructed, guiding Sophie to a stool. Keep your hand elevated. She quickly retrieved the first aid kit from the wall, donning gloves with practiced ease. May I see? Sophie extended her trembling hand. Minseo gently uncurled the girl's fingers, revealing a deep laceration across her palm. It will need stitches, Minseo assessed, her voice shifting to a calm, authoritative tone she hadn't used in years. But first, we need to clean it properly and control the bleeding. She worked with swift precision, removing a small glass fragment with tweezers, irrigating the wound, and applying pressure with sterile gauze. Her movements were so fluid they appeared choreographed, muscle memory from thousands of similar procedures, albeit usually in very different settings. You really were a doctor, weren't you? Sophie asked quietly. Minseo's hands paused momentarily before resuming their work. Who told you that? Everyone's talking about it. Tyler's father called the school board demanding your background check. Apparently Dr. Bennett defended you. Minseo secured the temporary bandage with medical tape. This will hold until you get proper medical attention. The school should call your parents to take you to urgent care. My mom's working double shifts today, Sophie said. She can't leave. Minseo hesitated, then made a decision. Come with me. She led Sophie to the nurse's office, currently empty during the nurse's lunch break. From a locked cabinet, Minseo retrieved a suture kit. This will sting, she warned as she cleaned the wound again with antiseptic. Sophie watched in fascination as Minseo prepared the materials. Aren't you going to get in trouble for this? Probably, Minseo admitted, threading the curved needle with practiced ease. But proper treatment within the first hour significantly reduces scarring and infection risk. A pianist should protect her hands. Sophie's eyes widened. How did you know I play piano? Minseo smiled slightly as she began the first suture. Callus patterns, left hand, fingers 2 through 5. Classical training, I'd guess. 12 years, Sophie confirmed, wincing as the needle pierced her skin. Focus on your breathing, Minseo instructed. Tell me about your favorite piece to play. As Sophie described Debussy's Clair de Lune, Minseo worked methodically, each stitch placed with perfect spacing and tension. 7 years away from surgery had not diminished her technical skill. There, she said finally, tying off the last suture. 7 stitches. They should be removed in 10 days. Until then, keep it clean and dry. Sophie examined her hand with amazement. That's incredible. It barely hurts now. The lidocaine will wear off in about an hour. Take acetaminophen for pain. Minseo disposed of the materials in the biohazard container. You should still have a doctor look at it, but it should heal well. Why? Sophie asked suddenly. Minseo looked up, confused. Why what? Why are you a janitor when you can do this? She gestured to her neatly sutured hand. Minseo was saved from answering by the arrival of the school nurse, who took one look at the situation and immediately called the principal. Within an hour, Minseo found herself once again in Dr. Bennett's office, this time accompanied by the school nurse, the vice principal, and the school's legal counsel. You performed an unauthorized medical procedure on a student, the lawyer stated flatly. Do you understand the liability issues here? Minseo nodded, eyes downcast. I do. Ms. Park is still a licensed physician, Dr. Bennett interjected. And from what the nurse tells me, the procedure was medically necessary and expertly performed. That's not the point, the lawyer argued. We have protocols, which would have resulted in a 16-year-old with a significant hand injury waiting hours for treatment, Dr. Bennett countered. Ms. Park made a judgment call that could cost the school if there are complications. There won't be, Minseo said quietly, but with absolute certainty. The discussion continued around her, voices rising and falling as various scenarios were debated. Minseo remained still, her mind drifting to another conference room, another heated discussion, 7 years and half a world away. She had stood then too, as experts argued over her decision, a decision that had saved a child's life but broken every protocol in the process. Ms. Park? She blinked, returning to the present. All eyes were on her. Would you be willing to accept the school nurse position we discussed this morning? Dr. Bennett asked. Effective immediately rather than next month. Minseo looked at each face in turn, reading the various expressions: concern, skepticism, curiosity. Yes, she said finally. On one condition. Dr. Bennett raised an eyebrow. Which is? I keep my custodial duties in the morning hours, before students arrive. The vice principal frowned. That's highly unusual. Those are my terms, Minseo said firmly. After further discussion, they agreed. Minseo would work as a janitor from 5 to 8 each morning, then transition to the nurse's office for the remainder of the school day. As the meeting dispersed, Dr. Bennett asked Minseo to stay behind. You could have mentioned your medical license was still active, he said once they were alone. You didn't ask, she replied simply. He chuckled. Fair enough. His expression grew serious. Sophie Chen's mother called. She was quite moved by what you did. Apparently, Sophie has an audition for Juilliard next month. A hand injury could have derailed her entire future. Minseo nodded, unsurprised. She had recognized the dedication in the girl's hands. I still don't understand, Dr. Bennett said, leaning against his desk. Why walk away from such a distinguished career? Why hide your abilities? Minseo reached for her notebook, hesitated, then withdrew it from her pocket. She opened it to a page near the beginning and handed it to him wordlessly. Dr. Bennett read aloud. Lesson 1. The most dangerous hands are those that believe themselves infallible. True healing begins with humility. He looked up, questioning. 7 years ago, Minseo began slowly, I was assigned a case. A 7-year-old girl with congenital heart defects. Very complex, very high risk. Her parents had been told by 3 other surgeons that nothing could be done. She paused, the memory still sharp enough to steal her breath. I believed I could save her. I had developed a new technique, innovative but untested. The ethics committee denied my request to attempt it. Her voice hardened slightly. I proceeded anyway. What happened? Dr. Bennett asked softly. The surgery was successful, technically perfect. The technique worked exactly as I had predicted. Minseo's eyes grew distant. She survived the operation. Her heart function improved dramatically. I was praised for my brilliance, my courage. She fell silent. But, Dr. Bennett prompted gently, 3 weeks later she developed complications, not from the surgery itself, but from the immunosuppressive regimen I had insisted on. Her immune system collapsed. She contracted a common virus that her body couldn't fight. Minseo's voice dropped to a whisper. She died in her mother's arms while I watched, helpless. Doctor. Bennett returned the notebook to her. You couldn't have known. But I should have listened, Minseo replied, to the ethics committee, to her previous doctors, to her parents who questioned the aggressive medication protocol. She shook her head. I was so certain of my own brilliance that I stopped listening to wisdom around me. So you punished yourself by becoming a janitor. Minseo smiled faintly. Not punishment. Education. I needed to learn humility, to serve without recognition, to clean up messes without judgment. She touched her notebook. Every day here has been a lesson, in patience, in perspective, in what truly matters. Dr. Bennett studied her with new understanding. And have you learned enough? Minseo considered the question carefully. Perhaps it's time to find out. The following week brought changes more dramatic than Minseo could have anticipated. Word of her background spread throughout the school community, transforming how students and staff interacted with her. Where once she had been invisible, now she was the subject of fascinated attention. The nurse's office, typically quiet except during sports seasons, became surprisingly busy as students invented minor ailments for the chance to be treated by the surgeon Janitor, as they had taken to calling her. Minseo maintained her dual role with quiet dignity. Each morning, she arrived before dawn to clean the school's east wing, finding peace in the familiar routine. By 8 o'clock, she changed from her blue custodial uniform into a white medical coat provided by the school, transitioning to her role as interim nurse. On Wednesday of that first week, Sophie Chen appeared in the doorway of the nurse's office during lunch period. "How's the hand?" Minseo asked, gesturing for her to enter. "Healing perfectly," Sophie replied, extending her palm for inspection. The sutures were neat, the wound edges approximated with minimal inflammation. My regular doctor was impressed. He said they were the most precise stitches he'd ever seen. Minseo nodded, satisfied. "Keep it clean. Return Monday for suture removal." Sophie lingered, shifting her weight from one foot to another. "Actually, I came to ask you something else." "Yes? Our pre-med club is having a special meeting tomorrow. We'd like you to speak." Minseo stiffened. "Dr. Bennett put you up to this." "No," Sophie said quickly. "He doesn't even know I'm asking. This is from us, the students. After what happened with Tyler, and then with my hand, we want to hear your story." "I don't have a story worth telling." "I think you do." Sophie's expression grew earnest. "Most of us are killing ourselves trying to be perfect, pressuring ourselves to get into the right schools, have the right accomplishments. Some of my friends are already on anxiety medication, and we're just in high school." Minseo remained silent, though her face softened slightly. "We need to hear from someone who's been through it all," Sophie continued. "Someone who reached the top and then chose something different." When Minseo still didn't respond, Sophie sighed. "Just think about it, okay? 3 o'clock tomorrow in the science lecture hall." After Sophie left, Minseo pulled out her notebook and wrote, "Potential lesson 348. Perhaps wisdom gained must eventually be wisdom shared." That night she dreamed of Korea, of surgical theaters and hospital corridors, of anxious parents and small, brave patients. But mostly, she dreamed of Yoonji, the 7-year-old girl with bright eyes and a crooked smile who had changed everything. In the dream, Yoonji sat on a hospital bed, swinging her legs back and forth. "Why are you still scrubbing floors, Dr. Park?" she asked. "Did you forget what you told me before my surgery?" Minseo approached the bed. "What did I tell you?" "You said, sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting. It's learning to live differently after the battle." Minseo awoke with tears on her cheeks and clarity in her heart. The science lecture hall was packed the following afternoon, not just with pre-med club members, but with students from across grade levels. In the back row, Minseo spotted Dr. Bennett and several other faculty members. Sophie stood at the podium, looking nervous. "Thank you all for coming. As you know, we've had some Revelations recently about someone many of us have passed in the hallways for years without really seeing. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I didn't think she would actually come, Sophie continued, but I'm honored to introduce Dr. Minseo Park, who has agreed to share her story with us today. The room fell silent as Minseo walked slowly to the front, still wearing her white coat from the nurse's office. She stood behind the podium, surveying the sea of young faces watching her with undisguised curiosity. For a moment she considered walking out. Instead, she took a deep breath and opened her notebook. I was 12 years old when I decided to become a doctor, she began softly, her slight accent more pronounced with emotion. My grandfather had died of heart disease, and I promised my grandmother I would learn to fix broken hearts. She smiled faintly at the memory. I took that promise very literally. For the next 40 minutes, Minseo shared her journey, the grueling years of medical school, her groundbreaking research, the accolades and accomplishments. She spoke of 72-hour shifts and life-or-death decisions, of the godlike feeling that came with holding a human heart in her hands. Then, with a steady voice, she told them about Yunji. I was the best, she said simply. Everyone told me so, and I believed them. That belief made me dangerous. She described the fateful surgery, the initial success, and the devastating complication. As she spoke of Yunji's final days, her voice remained controlled, but tears slid silently down her cheeks. The room was utterly still. Afterward, I couldn't bear to touch another scalpel. I left Korea, left medicine, or so I thought. I came here seeking anonymity, simplicity, and lessons in humility. She closed her notebook and looked directly at the students for the first time. You see me as two different people, the invisible janitor and the brilliant surgeon. But I am simply one person who learned at great cost that technical skill without humility and wisdom is dangerous, that listening is often more important than knowing, that sometimes our greatest contributions come not from our achievements, but from our willingness to serve quietly where needed. Minseo's gaze found Tyler Matthews, sitting uncomfortably in the third row. We all clean up messes, our own and others. The only question is whether we do so with resentment or grace. D. As she stepped away from the podium, the silence held for one heartbeat, then two, before Sophie began to applaud. Others joined, the sound swelling until the entire room was on its feet. Minseo stood awkwardly under the weight of their attention, unaccustomed to being seen so completely. Dr. Bennett approached the podium. Thank you, Dr. Park, for your courage and candor. I think we all have much to reflect on. He turned to the assembly. This concludes our special session. Please exit quietly. As students filed out, many stopped to thank Minseo personally. Several girls were crying. One boy asked if she would consider starting a medical internship program at the school. Eventually, only Minseo, Sophie, and Dr. Bennett remained in the lecture hall. That, Dr. Bennett said with gentle emphasis, is why I've been asking you to speak to our students. Minseo nodded, emotionally drained but strangely at peace. I understand now. What happens next? Sophie asked. Will you go back to being a surgeon? Minseo considered the question. No, that chapter has closed. She touched her white coat. But perhaps there are other ways to heal. The following Monday, as Minseo finished her morning cleaning routine, she found an envelope taped to her supply closet door. Inside was a card signed by dozens of students and staff, thanking her for her service, both as a janitor and as a medical professional. At the bottom was a personal note from Tyler Matthews. I'm sorry for how I treated you. Thank you for teaching me to see people differently. Minseo was adding the card to her notebook when Dr. Bennett found her. I have a proposal, he said without preamble. Our current health sciences teacher is retiring at the end of the semester. The position will include overseeing the nurse's office and teaching 3 classes in anatomy, physiology, and medical ethics. Minseo's eyes widened. You want me to teach? I can think of no one better qualified. He smiled. You can keep the morning janitorial shift if you want. I understand now why that matters to you. I'll need to think about it, she said, though her heart had already decided. Of course. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and the school board is insisting on a proper assembly to introduce you formally to the student body. They've invited local media. Minseo frowned. That seems unnecessary. Perhaps. Dr. Bennett's eyes twinkled. But I think you've been invisible long enough, Dr. Park. 2 weeks later, Minseo stood on the auditorium stage beside Dr. Bennett, facing the entire school population. She wore a simple blouse and skirt, rather than either of her uniforms, though the leather notebook remained in her pocket. Dr. Bennett addressed the assembly, explaining Minseo's background and new role at the school. As he spoke, she observed the students' faces, hundreds of young people with dreams and fears, strengths and flaws, visible and invisible wounds. When it was her turn to speak, Minseo stepped forward, suddenly overwhelmed with emotion. The journey from renowned surgeon to school janitor to teacher had been one she could never have anticipated. Yet standing here, she felt a sense of rightness, of having been guided by a wisdom greater than her own. She unfolded a paper with her prepared remarks, then set it aside. 7 years ago, I believed I had failed in my calling, she said, her voice strong and clear. I thought by hiding my gifts, I was learning humility. Now I see that true humility isn't denying our talents or punishing ourselves for mistakes. It's using whatever abilities we have in service to others without concern for recognition or status. She smiled, her eyes moist. Whether cleaning floors or teaching classes or mending wounds, the work itself is sacred when done with love and attention. This is what I hope to teach you, not just about medicine, but about life. As applause filled the auditorium, Minseo caught sight of Sophie in the front row, tears streaming down her face. Beside her sat Marcus Washington and, surprisingly, Tyler Matthews, both listening intently. In that moment, surrounded by the community that had first overlooked her, then humiliated her, and finally embraced her, Minseo felt something she had not experienced in 7 years. The sensation of a heart, her own, fully healed and beating with renewed purpose. That evening, she added a final entry to her leather notebook, Lesson 365. The greatest healing doesn't always happen in operating rooms, but in the quiet spaces between broken hearts, learning to beat in rhythm with forgiveness. Every life has many chapters. The most important pages are often those written after our deepest failures, when grace finds us and writes a new story through our wounds. She closed the book and placed it on her shelf, not to be forgotten, but to make space for a new notebook. A new chapter was beginning, and Minseo Park was ready.